Good morning, everybody. Thank you for joining us today at this session on net zero pathways for states and businesses, being presented to you by the Bengal Chamber of Commerce and Industry and British Deputy High Commission, Kolkata. In the first half of today, we have this program on net zero. It will be followed by a session on electric vehicles in the second half. I'll be requesting the dignitaries who will be joining us in the opening session to please join us on the dais. Mr. Debe Mukherjee, past president, the Bengal Chamber of Commerce and Industry, and Managing Director, Synergist Energy Private Limited. Mr. Peter Cook, acting British Deputy High Commissioner to East and Northeast India. Sri Suresh Kumar, IS, Additional Chief Secretary, Department of Power, Government of West Bengal. Sri Kalyamurthy Balamurugan, IFS, Chief Environment Officer, Department of Environment, Government of West Bengal. Dr. Ashok Kumar Ghosh, Chairman, Bihar State Pollution Control Board, Principal Secretary, and Secretary Environment and Forest Department, Bihar, will be joining us virtually. With this, I would request the dignitaries to be joining us in the opening session to please join us on the dais. Mr. Deb Mukherjee, Mr. Peter Cook, Sri Suresh Kumar, Sri Kalyamurthy Balamurugan, and of course Dr. Ghosh would be joining us online. Pinky, give us a heads up when you find Dr. Ghosh online, then we can have him, then we can have him on the screen also. Well, Mr. Balamurugan has, arrived at the venue. He'll be joining us on the dais soon. With this, I would request Mr. Deb Mukherjee, past president of the Bengal Chamber, to formally welcome all. Thank you.
A very good morning to all of you, ladies and gentlemen. Right at the outset, I need to make an honest confession. I am a proxy speaker this morning at the first session because actually our president-designate was supposed to formally welcome you, but due to some other pressing engagement, he has been unable to come. He might join a little later. But it gives me immense pleasure to welcome all of you to this very important and timely discussion forum, and a formal and a welcome to Mr. Peter Cook, the acting Deputy High Commissioner to East India, East and Northeastern states. That's a bit of an addition, Peter, I think. Earlier, it used to be only East, but it's nice to see that Northeast is now within the ambit of the Eastern part of the responsibility of the High Commission. Mr. Suresh Kumar, the Additional Chief Secretary, Government of West Bengal, the Chief Conservator of Forests, welcome, Balamurugan. Yes, Bala, Mr. Bala, thank you very much. And of course, we also have Mr. Who's the other gentleman from Bihar? Dr. Ashok Ghosh from Bihar. Welcome to all of you. Just a few observations I thought which might be relevant to kickstart the discussion this morning. To my mind, ladies and gentlemen, any discussion on climate action, presupposes or is based on a fundamental mantra, if I could say, which emerged out of the Paris Agreement and which is now taking firm shape all across the world, which is the mantra of common yet differentiated responsibility towards climate action with respective capabilities which has emerged later. But allow me to make a slight change in this mantra and add the word objective. I would like to put it as common objective, but differentiated responsibility with respective capabilities. The objective in terms of net zero or low carbon pathway or carbon-less future is understood very well. And this is something which we have all signed up for. But contextually, geographically, nation-wise, the compulsions and ground realities and constraints are different for every country. And therefore, the differentiated responsibility bit comes in. So if we say common objective, yet differentiated responsibility, and most important now, respective capabilities. Because not every country is capable of actually fulfilling the objective or realizing the objective, though they have the heart to do it. And that's why this has to be understood by every nation towards the cooperation. And this is what sets the context for today's discussion, the cooperation between countries in realizing this common objective. And in the fitness of things, India and UK are natural allies, natural partners, historically and otherwise. And therefore, it makes eminent sense to discuss our learnings, our practices, and most importantly, when we are talking about carbon, we cannot take a restrictive definition or use a restrictive definition in terms of what we are going to deliberate today, low carbon pathways. So a discussion on carbon has to be set in the perspective of sustainability. Sustainable outcomes, so an expansive definition of whether we call it carbon neutrality, net zero, or anything got to do with carbon in the context of climate action needs to be seen in an expansive sense within the sustainability context, or what is known to all of us, the SDGs as set out by the United Nations. And therefore, we need to look at the discussion of today, if I may be permitted to say, not just in terms of stakeholders of business, but business, government, communities. So the concept of triple helix, as it were, where it cuts across the ecosystem, brings in all the stakeholders, bottom up, individually all of us, the communities, the states, the academia, and the government, and of course business, all put together. So therefore, the dialogue that happens is only as important as the outcome that comes out of a discussion and deliberation with all stakeholders. I'm sure our deliberations for the whole day, I understand in the afternoon session, we have a specific focus on electric mobility, which, again, this particular city and state are doing some great work on electric mobility, especially on mass transport. And I'm sure our additional chief secretary will be able to tell you a bit more about it. But that's a specific focus in the afternoon. And in the morning session, of course, we have case studies and best practices from the corporate leaders, from business, and also from the policymakers. On that note, ladies and gentlemen, again, on behalf of the Bengal Chamber, and also, I suppose, on behalf of the British High Commission, may I welcome all of you to a very successful, meaningful, and really good, we are looking at a really good outcome from today's deliberations. Thank you very much. Enjoy the day. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mukherjee. I would now request Mr. Peter Cook, Acting British Deputy High Commissioner to East and Northeast India, to please deliver the opening remarks.
Namaskar, good morning. Kemon achen? Ami Peter Cook, Acting British Deputy High Commissioner, Kolkata. Ami ekhane Kolkataয়. Amara jonmo ekhane, Woodlands Hospital, Alipur, 1963. Amio ekjon gorbito Bengali. I'm going to do the rest in English for my lovely English friends. Thank you so much for coming along today and for joining this particular occasion. A huge thanks to our partners, the Bengal Chamber of Commerce, and indeed a strong gratitude to Mr. Suresh Kumar and to our distinguished panel and guests, Mr. Bala and also Mr. Ghosh, who are joining this particular session. One of my colleagues has prepared a very professional and very well done set of remarks on the reasons why this kind of conversation today is important, why it fits into a bigger picture, and why I think we are all committed and passionate and dedicated to the common objective that Mr. Mukherjee explained. If they will forgive me, I'm not going to try and persuade this audience of the rationale, of the justification, of the necessity of trying to work on climate change. I think everyone in this room agrees that we cannot ignore the challenge, the threat. I think I agree with Mr. Mukherjee wholeheartedly that the common objective is to make the right kind of change because it is a necessity. It is no longer an option. It is going to be vital for our future to try and solve this conundrum. And it is not something that can be solved simply in Bengal or simply in Kolkata. This is a global issue. Carbon dioxide does not recognize borders. Pollution does not recognize borders. The challenge of supporting biodiversity will not be met because one country gets it right. We need everyone to cooperate. And so I endorse thoroughly the remarks made by Mr. Mukherjee that there is not just, indeed, I would go further and say it's not just a triple helix, it is a multiple helix, because there are so many different aspects to trying to solve this incredibly complicated problem. We are going to need participation from all countries. We are going to need participation from all participants in our society, from the private sector to government, to academics, to expertise, to try and bring together the knowledge, the capability, the skills, the ambition, the drive. If we are going to succeed, it's because we don't just succeed in this room, we succeed out in the public, and that they are persuaded to change their behavior. They are persuaded to make the differences in their lives that will end up saving our planet. And that is the kind of ambition which I think we should all unite behind, that common objective, that whatever we agree today is incredibly important, but it is the beginning of a much bigger campaign if we are going to change the hearts and minds of people across the world. Might I also add one more thing to what Mr. Mukherjee, I think, explained, which is that the differentiated responsibilities. The United Kingdom recognizes that we are all in a different position on the journey to development. We recognize the contributions that are made to the climate problem are differentiated, and consequently the solutions are differentiated. We are not solving this problem just for the UK. The UK is committed to trying to help, support and sponsor the right kind of actions, the right kind of approach from all our partners across the globe. It is a major foreign policy priority set down by the British government. And so today is one small piece of a much bigger jigsaw that the UK wants to try and build, where we can work in support of governments across the world, in support of societies across the world, in support of the private sector across the world, to try and bring that alliance of minds that will help build the solutions for this, and that will help us create the right kind of change so that our citizens and our society can adapt and adjust. We recognize that finance, which was the big discussion at COP27, how can we get the finance right? How can we ensure that the finance that is available in Western markets can also be made available to those developing countries that are going to need it to try and create the right kind of change? Finance has been seen as one of the major impediments to governments driving this forward, and we need to look out for solutions on finance. The financial question is not on today's agenda. That's going to be for another conversation at another time. But today we are very pleased to talk about the net zero pathway. The pathway that takes our collective society through a transition. And that again is going to require a coalition, an alliance of peoples from many, many different parts of our society and many different countries. I'm very pleased that we have some expertise in the room today from the UK. We have brought a number of our leading institutions, and I have a lovely list, so forgive me if I'm just checked to make sure I don't forget anyone. We have brought with us today the Centre of Excellence for Low Carbon and Fuel Cell Technologies, CENEX for short. We have with us the Connected Places Catapult, Motability, the NPTC of Wales, and forgive me, I'm not sure I can spell out the initials. I should have written it down before I came out. We have KPMG UK and we have Newcastle University, all with us today in this room. And we want very much to make that expertise part of the conversation, to make sure that we can help stimulate the right kind of thinking, the right kind of approach, to get the policies right, to get the research right, the innovation right, the technology right, so that we can help achieve this ambition. Today is only the first of a program of discussions that we want to see over the coming months and indeed years. It is going to take more than one conference to solve this, and it is obviously bigger than Bengal, and it's bigger than the UK. We need to try and make sure this happens on a global scale. But we have to make a start, and today is as good a place as any. And the Hyatt Regency have been kind enough to give us this space and this time where I hope we can really make some progress today on identifying how we might do that. Where do we start? What are the right ways? And I hope our UK expertise and our ambition to have that conversation will help give everybody something to take away, something to go and think about, and something that will inspire them to do a little bit more on this particular problem. We need that leadership today. We need everyone in this room to stand up and say, I know where I can contribute. I know what I can do. I know how I can take this back to my family, my business, my institution, and try and make that change more real. If we can all do that today, we stand a chance. We can perhaps begin that process. And I'm so pleased that we have distinguished speakers with us today who will help share their insights and help give us that food for thought that will allow us to be part of that. I'm sure we're all going to learn something. I'm sure we're all going to benefit from the conversation today. I'm looking forward to it very much. I'm going to shut up now and say thank you very much for your time. I hope you enjoy the day.
Thank you, Mr. Peter Cook. As you can see in the title of the program, it is Net Zero Pathways for States and Businesses. For this net zero, of course, policymakers are very important stakeholders in the conversation, in the actions to be taken. In this program, we have a policymakers session, and I would request Sri Suresh Kumar, Additional Chief Secretary, Department of Power, Government of West Bengal, to please share his thoughts.
Good morning, everyone. Distinguished members on the dais, Mr. Peter Cook, and others. Ladies and gentlemen, the transition to net zero by 2070 is a pretty ambitious target, and India has committed to this target in more ways than one. In the last COP26, we had committed to targets of 500 gigawatt non-fossil fuel by 2030, 50% of the utilization of power through renewable sources by 2030, reduction of 1 billion tons of CO2 emission by 2030, 45% reduction of carbon intensity by 2030, and reaching the overall net zero target by 2070. Now, these are, some people call Panchamrit and so on and so forth, but then these are pretty ambitious targets which government of India and its commitments to the world had agreed to. Okay, I mean, not everyone was happy about it, but then at least among the top 3 polluting countries in the world, China, USA and India, probably India at least went ahead and made certain ambitious targets. I think that's a pretty important thing to look at. China rigidly did not agree to anything. Okay. Currently our energy mix, the primary energy mix that we have, we are dependent on coal, somewhere around 53%, natural gas is around 6%, oil is around 29%, non-fossil is around 12%, so that includes your nuclear fuels and solar and so on and so forth, etc., etc., etc. Now, the way we can probably try and understand the whole situation is by modeling. Now, I don't know, I mean, people might have concerns about modeling, but then nevertheless, if you have to read net zero trajectory, what do we need to do? Now, India would need a renewable energy mix of somewhere around 5 to 7 TW, that is tera, that is 1,000 times a giga by 2070. Now, we need to have large-scale energy storage technologies to reduce dependence on fossil fuels. We might have to use more nuclear power, but currently I think nuclear power is definitely a bit of a no-no after Fukushima, but then nevertheless I think we'll have to take the plunge on nuclear power. Now, biomass-based fuels, currently everyone, in fact every country produces a huge amount of biomass, but unfortunately it's not used the way it should be. CBG could be a good source of energy for that. We're pretty antagonistic to setting up hydro projects. We make it so encumbrance to set up a hydro project because of all sorts of environmental reasons. Well, nevertheless, we have to go ahead and set up hydro projects, come what may. And we would need something like $200 to $300 billion to, push this whole agenda forward. Now, how are we going to get this sort of money? In fact, the 2 gentlemen before me, in fact, talked about the multiple helixes and so on and so forth. I mean, you can't produce this sort of money. I mean, no government has the wherewithal to print notes or, the whole system can go for 6. So, what we have to do is that we'll have to enlist everyone to this major effort. So, the people, the organizations, financial organizations, so on and so forth, all have to come forward and all have to really participate and make it. I mean, the only job a government can do probably is to guide and probably, in fact, make policies for enabling this and take the whole thing forward. Now, one major aspect that we have to really look at is the decarbonization aspect. Now, coal sector really has to undergo a major amount of decarbonization. Just transition has to come in where, all the people who are dependent on coal sector would have to be weaned off coal sector and they would also have to find better jobs and new jobs, etc. We might have to look at coal gasification probably, though it is not as good. Then bioenergy is one area where we need to really look at instead of looking at the conventional natural gas. Refineries are extremely crucial in our processes. Now, we need to have ways, in fact, to decarbonize refineries. Blending green hydrogen is something that needs to be thought of quickly. We do have now gas networks all over the country, but then we need to add other gases to it, like your CBG, that is biomethane, and green hydrogen to it. The RE potential that we have, that is the renewable energy potential that we have, that has to be exploited to the maximum. Now, currently, we still haven't been able to get towards it, and there is definitely a major objective, in fact, of the Government of India to push all the states to use the RE potential. East India has somehow been very reluctant to go forward in exploiting the RE potential that it has, because we are rich in coal. And coal-dependent states definitely are going to take much more longer time to get off the coal conveyor belt. Now we need to look at probably offshore wind. We still do not have any offshore wind plants in the country. I mean, Norway has, UK has, so on and so forth. We're still very fighting shy of, getting into offshore. But then offshore potential is very good in India. We still haven't exploited it. Rooftop solar is very, very minimal. In fact, every DISCOM has managed to see to it that rooftop solar doesn't take off. It's very ironical, I mean, in the sense that the rooftop solar would definitely stabilize the daytime grid. I'm not looking at the nighttime part of it, because nighttime anyway solar is not available. The DISCOMs have always felt that, rooftop solar is a threat, and come what may, they should not support it. So they have put up their own, barriers to it, and have not allowed it to proliferate the way it ought to have proliferated, and it could have helped the DISCOMs in more ways than one. In fact, in most other countries like Australia, USA, and EU also, the DISCOMs are actively involved in the solar business. They help people to set up their own this thing, and they have absolutely no issues about demand being lost to someone who's going to set up a rooftop solar. But that's another area. We need to tap large hydro projects. There is definitely a scope for geothermal and the tidal energy, which we still haven't informed. In fact, Gulf of Kutch, Gulf of Kambata, and probably a little bit within the West Bengal tidal rivers, we could definitely look at some of that. Now, we need a massive increase in the power system flexibility to operate the grid. I mean, the grid, unfortunately, is not something which, is static in any sense. We all think it's just a mess of wires and poles and so on and so forth, towers and so on and so forth. But then it's like a living organism through which energy is going up and down, up and down, up and down. Now, where is the demand coming in, and how are you going to push the supply on real-time basis is a major challenge. And this is where, in fact, the grid management is where, in fact, even this very smallest changes in the frequency can have a huge impact on the grid. And believe me, renewable energy or probably even any other system can definitely bring about these changes. Like, for example, if you have a large amount of electric vehicles drawing power, yes, they can have an impact on the stability of the grid. Now, if you were to pump extra amount of energy through the renewable projects into the grid also without any offtake, then also you're going to have problems. So these are areas where definitely we have to look at. So how ready is a grid to take all these additional forces that can imbalance it? That's another thing. I've mentioned atomic power. In fact, now even the NPCIL is setting up modular reactors. They, I think, borrowed the technology from Russia. And modular reactors, not of large size, but then of smaller sizes, they call them micro modular reactors, are a good opportunity to look at. Now, the trend in the country has been is that we always set up power generation facilities to meet the peak power. Now, that's a very, I would say, not a right option to do, because our objective should be is to ensure that the peak is not a peak. It should be as flat as possible, so that we can match the requirement with the generation. Now, it's not feasible to keep on, generating to meet a peak and then keep the generation idle when the peak is not there. So economics don't work that way. So there is there is definitely a need for what is known as flattening the peak. That's an extremely crucial area, and DISCOMs and generators as well as the grid controller in India needs to really pay attention to this aspect. And a major contribution to this peak, I think all of us know, is things like air conditioning, which suddenly puts a lot of pressure on the grid, and you need to meet the demand. So it's a spike which we need to reduce and flatten it. That's an area where we really have to work a lot. Currently, if you look at a business as usual case and a net zero case, now in 4-5 sectors that principally demand energy, one is your industrial sector, agriculture sector, your cooking sector, then your transport sector. Say 5 sectors if you were to look at. Now these 5 sectors need a very typical, in the sense that a very focused approach as to how do we transition the energy demands in these sectors. Now this is an area where we still haven't been able to improve, and within the transport sector, electric vehicles is a major area. All the 2, 3, 4-wheeler vehicles definitely need to come on EV. Maybe the larger vehicles will probably come on hydrogen cell, because they need more energy intensity per unit weight. That's an area which we need to do. Demand side, definitely we have to ensure that we have more energy service companies coming in, who definitely will provide services as and when required, and definitely we will be able to ensure that things are streamlined and economic in all sense. Now, renewable energy requires what's known as the circular economy. So starting from how you use minerals to create EV cells, and then use EV cells, and after they lose the ability to hold power capacity, then again you need to extract the minerals to really set up a circular economy. It's not feasible for us to tear around, looking around for minerals all over the world, then extract and then deploy, and cause much more issues for the world to handle. So at the moment, even in India, we are looking at either 2030 or 2047. That's 1947, 100 years. 2047 is a very near year to look at how we have progressed. Still haven't thought about the 2070. But then, even if you were to ensure that the carbon emissions were to start flattening at around 2047 and start declining around 2047 onwards, then I think we have won a major battle. For this, definitely a lot needs to be done, and I hope that we all live to see something happen. Thank you.
Thank you, Sri Suresh Kumar. We'll now hear from Dr. Ashok Kumar Ghosh, Chairman, Bihar State Pollution Control Board and Principal Secretary, Environment and Forest Department, Bihar. Dr. Ghosh, can you hear us?
Yeah, I can. I'm listening.
Thank
Am
you.
I audible?
Yes, sir, you are.
So good morning to all of you, and my congratulations to Bengal Chamber of Commerce and British High Commission for organizing this wonderful initiative program, because there is a demand of the hour. I work in Bihar, and for Bihar, climatic change and this increase in the global temperature is very significant, because we are agriculture-based economy. And if any climatic change is there and change of temperature, global temperature is there, we will be affected. And that is why it is of great importance as far as our state is concerned. We initiated some work on this issue way long back, 2 years back, because we thought that this is a problem that we have to tackle in the interest of Bihar. And initially we found that we have lack of primary data to model and also lack of expertise. And for that we started connecting with different organizations, and now we are in a shape to move forward. I have some slides that will review. If I can collect, I can share my screen. Let me check, please. Yeah. Yes, can you see the screen?
No, sir. Yes, yes, sir.
Is it coming now?
Yes.
Yes, sir, your screen is, I mean, we can view the screen.
So I'll take some time, a couple of minutes, to review the things that is related to our work towards climate resilient and low carbon development pathways for Bihar. Our study is state specific as of now, because my view is there that every state has to chip in, and collective effort will ultimately lead to the result for India. And just a very brief outline that I will be discussing with you about the project that we are doing with UNEP, the key objectives, the partners that we have with adaptation and mitigation. They are the different parts of my presentation. About the project low carbon climate resilient strategy for Bihar, we are focusing on two aspects, both mitigation and adaptation, because there are two components, very, very important components that has to be considered. And for that, we are trying to create GHG baseline, business as usual scenario, net zero analysis 2040 to 2070, and sectorial insight and recommendations. And similarly, at the adaptation level, we have policy landscape assessment, we have historical climate trends and future projections, risk assessment, and also sectoral insight and recommendations. Here are the different aspects. And we are going to focus on that. And the particular areas on that is directly concerned with net zero is agriculture, water, forest and biodiversity, disaster management, and health. It is not confined to activity of any one department. There has to be proactive role for all of them, whether it is agriculture or water or forest, disaster, health, and so on and so forth. And there has to be statewide strategy, including sectoral transitions, finance, and governance of the mechanism. That is there. The key objective of the project that we are doing as of now is preparation of GHG emission inventory, because we are never having a very robust data in this field. And also carbon footprint analysis of relevant sectors that is going to reduce the carbon emission. And also development of climate impact scenario and vulnerability assessment. These are also the parts. And preparation of strategy for climate resilient and low carbon development pathway for 2070. These are the areas on which we are working. And as I told you, we have limited expertise in Bihar State Pollution Control Board Forest Department. So the first thing that we did, we talked with UNEP and signed a memorandum of understanding between government of Bihar through Bihar State Pollution Control Board and UNEP. And many partners were hooked in with different expertise, like WRI India for adaptation sectors and overall project coordination. Also CEW for mitigation sectors. Then Sakti Sustainable Energy Foundation for different areas like transport, energy, waste, and so on and so forth. And we formed one PMU, Project Management Unit, supported by Sakti Foundation, and is based in Bihar State Pollution Control Board, Patna, where I am the chairman and I am supervising all the activities myself. The first aspect is adaptation, on which we have to classify them, the approach that may be short term, medium term, long term. In short term, we have climate current risk, that is one thing. Then current practices, like crop, increased productivity, current infrastructure that we have, current limitations that we have, and also current maladaptation. That is also important to know, that like overuse of the groundwater that takes place in Bihar and elsewhere in the Indo-Gangetic plain. And also build resilience and coping capacity. Then in medium term, we have defined new climate risks that is coming year after year, like higher temperature, more heavy rainfalls. Then new technology and varieties, that is also we are studying. Climate resilient practices and climate proof infrastructure, and also reducing maladaptive trends and enhancing adaptive capacity. That is our medium term strategy. And long term is greater climate uncertainties, extreme events, and also adaptive governance for erratic climatic future. In which there are three aspects. One is horizontal and vertical coordination between different stakeholders, decentralized decision making, and of course social safety nets also, that is also over there. And ultimately, we have to come to mainstream in domestic finance, access international finance, because without finance, we cannot move forward. We can make planning with minimal finance, but at the implementation level, we require lots of finance from different national agencies and also inter-can agencies. The study that we have adopted for planning is climate model projection that we have done, remote sensing analysis we have done for Bihar, and also adaptive capacity we have done with. And then policy review from time to time with stakeholders department that is also going on. We have also organized field trips in all the 38 districts of Bihar to know the ground realities and the problems being faced by farmers because they are the main stakeholders as far as our activity is concerned. And of course, prioritizing the action is that is also very important. These are the areas that method that we are using. And if you go with insight and priorities recommendations that has come up by now, it is still to be completed in this process. We expect that the project will be completed by May this year. But something that has come up already is enhancing capacity and skill development. That is one part, where regular training on climate change and water resource management is required by elected representatives, development officials, PRIs, ULBs, and community women leaders, etc. The Center for Excellence for Capacity Building of Forest Offices. That is a very important part because forest is a very important stakeholder in net zero pathway planning. Then skill development and market linkages for forest-based value addition enterprises, that is also part. Then future-ready infrastructure, that is another area where we are working. Cold storage and warehousing for securing post-harvest value chain, that is one there. Pack houses from 30 to 2000. Climate proofing infrastructure like electricity, water, hospitals, etc. And including the excluded, that is also very important. That is to implement heat early warning systems with communication targeted at the most vulnerable groups like farmers, construction workers, pregnant ladies, lactating elderly children, and gender-sensitive disaster relief camps and cooling shelters. And finance, of course, everything revolves around economics. We cannot neglect the finance part. Where investment in research in climate resilience varieties and practices are also there. And finally, the policy action. Policy for integrated management of surface water and groundwater and prevention of the groundwater overuse. Then at the mitigation level, we have two parts, mitigation and adaptation. In mitigation level, in the methodology that we are using is growth and development strategy, scenario modeling, and modeling for future pathways and scenarios like socio-economic, the energy demand and supply pathways, the prices, and also emission pathways. And then we also seek the stakeholder engagement, where continuous inputs in the modeling results, assessment of just transition, winners and losers, and potential policies that will need to be tested. And then deep dive studies, that is also a part, where detailed analysis of key emitting sectors with sectoral recommendation to bend the emissions curve and ensuring ground truthing of the macro level modeling. These are the methodologies that we are following. And ultimately, if we want to have net zero scenario and fulfill our ambitions, we have to integrate for net zero Bihar very important departments like power, the transport, building, waste, and AFOLU, that is also important, and industry. They are coordinating. All the line departments, they are working together. The committee is there where the representatives of all these departments are coming regularly and giving their inputs and requirements. That is going there. And I would like to highlight one point that is very important in our planning. That is, if you go to the third box in the left-hand side bottom, that is, we have low manufacturing base in Bihar. We have absence of integrated steel manufacturing and integrated cement plants. And we have brick kilns, a large number of brick kilns. For that we have to work. Bihar has about 6,000 brick kilns as of today. And we have already converted out of 6,000 about 4,500 brick kilns to cleaner technology. And we are not giving license to any new brick kiln that is having the old technology. And drastically, because brick kilns in Bihar are a major contributor of carbon. And so we have focused on that. And we have done the mapping of all the brick kilns throughout Bihar through remote sensing with the help of UNDP and University of Nottingham, UK. And now we have precise idea that where the break kilns are there and what is the emission level. And we have cut down the emission from brick sector to up to 60% by now. And we are hopeful that by next year we will be able to convert all of them. That will be the possibility. Then one more thing I would like to highlight, that is next step, the future steps that we are expected to do, where draft report is expected through this UNEP-led program on 30th May of this year, 2023. Then adoption of the institutional mechanism to implement the strategy and oversee the implementation of lighthouse projects. That is also we are doing. Public dissemination workshops in Bihar, we are planning to plan language assembly for communities, because communities are very important in achieving net zero. Without community participation, we cannot achieve that objective. Then outreach events also, we are trying to go to school children, community, so that they are sensitized. So these are the areas where we are working. And we are hopeful that by the end of this year, we will be in a proper condition to do something effective on the ground level. Of course, the biggest challenge is the finance, because for all the activities, all these activities, we require lots of finances. That is a challenge, and Bihar government is working towards that how to provide financial support for achieving net zero. Thank you very much for giving me a time and opportunity to express the things that we are doing for net zero in Bihar.
Thank you, Dr. Ghosh. We would now hear from Sri Kalyamurthy Balamurugan, Chief Environment Officer, Department of Environment, Government of West Bengal.
Savaika Namaskar, Abhinandan. It was a stunning opening remark by Peter Cook in his own style with a nice Bengali. It's great. It's promising to see one of the passionate leader, passionate bureaucrat. We always look forward to him, Mr. Suresh Kumar, Additional Chief Secretary, Department of Power. He has been already doing transformational work in the power sector. Happy to see you here, sir, and happy to listen to you. Mr. Gautam Ray, Dr. Ashok Kumar. Yeah. Mr. Mukherjee, and the wonderful lecture from Dr. Ashok Kumar Ghosh, all the distinguished audience here, and we also got wonderful team from Newcastle University, from Cenex Technologies. It's nice to see you all. First, my appreciation to Bengal Chamber of Commerce and Industries and UK High Commission for getting us all together on such an important issue in a timely manner. There are three reasons why this is a mind-boggling and very hopeful thing for me. Number one, we all know, yes, climate is an emergency, carbon is a crime, and as Mr. Peter said, carbon doesn't know the borders, there is no border for pollution. Number two is, who is getting the impact are most poor and vulnerable people. I am speaking about climate change, but I am safe in my home. But a poor farmer has to suffer by drought, untimely drought for which he doesn't know the reason. A poor tribal woman has to walk an extra long, for example, say 5 kilometers long to fetch water. And poor villages in Sundarbans have to frequently face cyclones. So the vulnerability, the climate injustice is another emergency, why this discussion is so important. Third thing, developing economies like us, we cannot sit behind and say we are developing and it is a time to first we'll develop economy and then we'll think about environment. No, it's not possible. For example, European Union has come out with a new kind of carbon tax. Whatever the goods they are importing, they're going to check what is the emission associated with a good. We have so many good trade partners with European Union, US and other countries, and we cannot just think like, okay, we'll go and fight with the WTO. So the point is, climate is also the reason why we have to speak about this, why we have to think about mitigation, carbon sink, decarbonization is, it is also going to affect our economy. So if for all this reason, this is a wonderful gathering. I really appreciate again the team who have brought us all here. Coming to this state, West Bengal, I would like to give us some optimistic point, like why this state is very good in case of carbon sink. There is a culture of conservation here. When other states were struggling with protecting their trees and forests in the government-owned area, in the forest land, we had a private tree act in 2006. West Bengal state has said, the tree may be yours, but when you have to cut the tree, you need a permission, or you have to fund, you have to ensure that you are going to replant it for 1:5 trees. This kind of conservation ethics is here, or legislation is strong here, number one. Number two, more than trees, we know now wetlands, peatlands are locking more carbon because of the slow decomposition. The tree may die and the carbon may again go out in under 200 years, but the wetland for even 500 years, they may lock carbon. Here there is a conservation ethic to conserve wetlands. We have a Fishery Act, we have a Land Act which says the private wetland also cannot be filled up. Amazingly, we have a East Kolkata Wetland Act which says, you all know that 95% of this wetland belongs to the individual private one. It doesn't belong to the government. So there is basically a market-based conservation happening because the government has come out with the East Kolkata Wetland Act way back in 2006 saying the land may belong to you, but you cannot, fill up. So there is a very good, there are so many sacred groves here. There is a religious way of conservation here. So the carbon locking is very good not only in West Bengal, in the entire East and Northeast India. There is a cultural conservation or carbon locking here, so it's a focus area is very good. But regarding decarbonization, yes, we need lots of policy change. This state, for example, there is a SECI report, state level climate change and energy conservation report by Niti Aayog, wherein we stand, like a mediocre way, we stand 14 in rank out of the 20 large states. But this decarbonization policy cannot happen in hollow, if you understand political ecology. So this kind of conversation, pressure, bottom-up word, as you said, Mr. Mukherjee said, Mr. Peter said, a bottom-up pressure has to be created so that we think about transition towards reducing coal, oil, gas, which are kind of crime against humanity. So in that way, again, I appreciate this initiation by Bengal Chamas. I had an opportunity to meet Mr. Peter, and I requested him for helping us. This is very specific. I'm also putting in open gathering. I don't know if officially if I can ask this help. Can you integrate, can the UK government help us to integrate into the carbon market of the European Union or developed countries? Why I'm asking, we have wonderful judiciary orders, judicial activism, National Green Tribunal, and good policy. But on the field, since I, have several meetings with fishermen or poor farmers who are actually conserving, who are actually locking, there is no incentive. We are only making a good act, and we are kind of forcing them. I sometimes feel it's a poverty penalty. There's been lack of ignorance. We are encashing and telling them, no, you cannot conserve your wetland. So what is the incentive there? So if you help us to take advantage of this market which is going on, yeah, it is criticized. Carbon market in European itself is not in a good shape. But if you can help us to understand how much carbon, for example, is locked in the East Kolkata wetland, is 12,500 hectare wetland. And if you get a carbon credit, and if you can float it in the international market, for example, if you can, in one point of time, if you can distribute that money we get to the poor fishermen or the poor villagers who are around the forest, that is a great thing. Maybe I'm just asking a rough thing, roughly. You may please consider UK government and Bengal Chamber of Commerce that one day we can reach to it. Like all of you, I'm also waiting to hear for the best practices. Thank you so much for each one of you for coming here, making this occasion wonderful. It gives hopes to me. Thank you.
Before we close this session, we would like to present our tokens of appreciation to the dignitaries on the dais. I would request Mr. Manojit Sengupta. He is the co-chairperson of Energy, Environment and Water Committee of the Bengal Chamber and Delivery Center Head of Eastern Region Tata Consultancy Services Limited. I would request Mr. Sengupta to please come and join us on the dais. So the token of appreciation from the British Deputy High Commission, Kolkata, and from Bengal Chamber. We may start with Mr. Balamurugan. to Mr. Deep Mukherjee. I believe the photographs which are being presented, wildlife photography of Sundarbans. And to ACS Suresh Kumar. And to Mr. Peter Cook. Do we have Dr. Ghosh still online? Oh, he's Dr. Ghosh, are you online?
Yes, I'm online.
Oh, can we have you in the video and maybe with Dr. Ghosh on screen and the dignitaries on the dais, we can have a photograph of the opening session.